My name is Leah Huggins. I'm a wife, a mother, and a proud U.S. Navy veteran. After 2 tours to Iraq, my husband was diagnosed with PTSD. My world spiraled out of control as fear, anxiety, doubt, and depression took over. I gave my life to Christ, took on a new mindset, and let go of the negativity of my past. I now help wives to find healing, encouragement, and strategy to overcome the effects of PTSD on their daily lives and in their marriage. So come on in and let's talk about it. Welcome to Marriage, Motherhood, and PTSD. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Marriage, Motherhood, and PTSD. This is the place where I empower and encourage women to take back their life as I give them the tools that are needed for self-love, for growth, and development. I'm your host, Coach Leah, and I'm so glad that you joined us today. All right, you guys, as usual, you already know we got a good show for you today. All right, today we're going to be talking about personal growth in marriage and why it all starts with you. All right, have you ever thought all the problems in your marriage would be fixed if only your spouse would change? I have been there, okay? I know I have. All right. There was a time when I believed that everything in my life would be perfect if only my husband would just change, right? I was always right. I don't see why he didn't get that, okay? But the truth is that the problem wasn't him. It was me. I had to realize that if I wanted to see things get better, then I would need to change for myself, right? I needed to take accountability for my own actions. I can't control what everybody else does. Not my husband, not my kids, not the people around me, but I can control me, all right? And that right there is where personal growth in marriage begins. Not with fixing your spouse, not with waiting for them to make the changes that you want to see, right? But with looking in the mirror and deciding I am going to grow. I'm going to heal. I'm going to become the best version of me for myself and for this marriage. As a military spouse, I have found myself lost in the identity of my husband. Everything seemed to be connected to him, right? His career, his duties, his name, even though I was active duty myself, right? Somewhere along the way, I felt like I got swallowed up in who he was, right? You don't have to be military to know what I'm talking about. As wives, as mothers, as women, we can get so focused on being who we need to be for everybody else that we stop being who we need to be for ourselves. It's not that serving your family is a bad thing. It's a beautiful thing. But when you lose yourself in the process, your marriage and your home feel the effect of that. And here's the truth. You cannot pour from an empty cup. All right. You can't show up fully for your spouse if you're drained or depleted or disconnected from yourself. And that's why identity is so important. You can't get stuck only in who you used to be. You can't let yourself disappear into the roles that you carry now. You have to come back to who you are and who you're developing into right now. And this is where personal growth in marriage really begins. It starts with asking yourself, what negative patterns or habits do I need to change within me? What parts of myself have I been neglecting while serving everybody else? And where do I need to grow so that I can show up as my best self in this marriage? For me, I had to stop waiting on somebody else to save me. I had to stop being a damsel in distress. All right. I was always looking for somebody to swoop in and fix my problems. But the truth is, no one can save me but God, and no one can change me but me. Your spouse can't fulfill your personal needs. They can support you, they can encourage you, they can pray for you, but they cannot do the work for you. And you can't do it for them. Each person has to take accountability for themselves. And that is the foundation of growth in marriage. Now, my personal growth journey, it didn't start with me saying I need to change my life. It actually began when I reconnected with God. I was in this dark place and I was battling depression. And when I gave my life to Christ, that's when the process started. I didn't think about growth at first. My thought was simply, I'm saved now and I want to know God better. And I started reading my Bible and going to church and going to Bible study and watching sermons on YouTube, right? I was listening to the worship music and reading Christian living books. And the more that I leaned into him, the more I started to understand myself. And that's when Isaiah 61 leapt off the page, right? The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to proclaim liberty to the captives and to bind up the brokenhearted. And in that moment, I realized my calling. And from there, the process of growth, it just kept unfolding. And I need to say this. My purpose as a wife and mother is still my first ministry, okay? That's where God placed me first. So everything else comes after that. But what I've learned is this: when I take care of me and invest in my growth, I don't neglect my family. I bless them. My kids, my husband, my home, they all benefit when I am whole. But here's what I know now. Growth in marriage doesn't just come from serving your family. Yes, being a wife and mother is holy and it's important, but if you lose yourself in it, your marriage suffers because you're not whole. So how do you start finding yourself again? All right, let me break it down. I'm glad you asked. First thing you need to do is reconnect with your passions. What are the things that you loved to do before you were so-and-so's wife, right? Or mommy? Did you love writing or painting or fitness or travel? Maybe you love baking or volunteering or singing, right? Bring those passions back. Carve out time for the things that used to light you up because they remind you of who you were as a person and not just who you are in your roles in life right now. You have to invest in your growth. Don't be so afraid to pour into yourself. Take a class, right? Go to a workshop. You can read some books that stretch your mind, all right? That might look like going to therapy or maybe to a coaching session. Maybe it's setting one personal goal each month just for you, right? Growth doesn't have to be expensive or dramatic. It's just simply you choosing to become better day by day. Another thing you need to do is to set boundaries, okay? This one can be hard, especially for women, because we feel guilty for saying no. But boundaries are love, right? They protect your peace, they protect your energy and your sanity. That means you don't have to volunteer for every committee, right? You don't have to say yes to every request or put yourself last on the list. Boundaries don't push people away. They actually allow you to show up more authentically and sustainably. You also have to nurture your faith. Now, for me, this was everything, okay? Reading my word, praying, listening to worship, those are the things that ground me, right? Faith gives me clarity about who I am, and it reminds me that I'm more than the roles that I play. Maybe for you, it's starting with 5 minutes a day in prayer or reading your Bible or a book before going to bed, or maybe finding that scripture to meditate on throughout the week. You have to practice self-reflection, right? This is where the real work happens. Ask yourself those hard questions. What negative patterns am I repeating, right? What habits do I need to break? What do I need to do more of in my life? What do I need to do less of, right? Journaling these answers can be eye-opening, and reflection also gives you insight, and insight will lead to your growth. And here's the truth: your spouse cannot fulfill you. They can support you, they can cheer you on, they can even walk alongside you, but they cannot do the work for you. And you can't do the work for them. Growth is personal and it's your responsibility. As you start doing it, it just doesn't change you, it changes your marriage as well. Now, my growth has definitely had an impact on my marriage, right? Some for the better and some for not, okay? If I'm gonna be real. On the positive side, when I started to feel better about myself, I was able to show up better in my relationship. I had more confidence in who I was. And because of that confidence, I was more pleasant to be around, right? It felt good to walk in my purpose, and that energy poured back into my marriage. But on the flip side, I'll be honest, okay? Over time, I let my personal growth take up too much space so that it started to pull me away from my relationship. I was so busy working on me that I didn't always keep it a healthy balance, right? While I was doing some work on myself, my husband would also be doing work on himself. But here's the thing about growth in marriage. You want individual growth, but you have to be intentional about growing together. If one person grows too much in one direction and leaves the other person behind, it can create problems. Your spouse may feel left out or even left behind. You might even feel that you have less and less in common. And that can be scary because what happens is that you start to grow so much that you feel like you've outgrown each other. And that's why balance is so important. Growth is necessary, but growth with communication, growth with intentionality, and growth with partnership. That's what keeps your marriage strong. Because at the end of the day, personal growth doesn't just affect you, it actually shifts the whole dynamic of your home. And here's the truth about growth. People are scared to grow. Why? Because growth means leaving behind that mindset that you've always had or that you become so comfortable with. Growth is going to require you to step out of your comfort zone, and that's not always easy. Sometimes growth means that you outgrow your circle, right? And let's be real, not everybody around you is going to be excited about your growth. Some people are happy with you just as long as you don't outgrow them. And as long as you stay at their level, they're comfortable. But the moment you start changing, they get uncomfortable. That's why you have to remember that growth is for you. This is your journey. You don't owe anybody an explanation about wanting to better yourself. And in marriage, this fear can feel even heavier because the thought of growing apart from your spouse is scary, right? But here's the thing. You can't hold yourself back from becoming who God has called you to be just because you're afraid of being alone. You want to grow together, yes, but even if your spouse isn't moving at the same pace, you still have to be faithful to your own journey. Now, I want to encourage you here, okay? Because growth takes time. Nothing happens overnight. I didn't even realize I was changing until I looked back and saw how far I had come, right? That's the beauty of consistency. You keep doing the work. You keep showing up for yourself and keep making those small changes, right? Over time, those small changes are going to add up to big transformation. It all starts with your mindset. You have to get to the point where you say enough is enough, right? I can't keep living like this. Something has got to change. Nobody else can make that decision for you. Only you know when it's really time to make the change. And when you do that, that decision becomes your turning point in your journey of growth. All right, so let's talk about how to actually do this, okay? Because personal growth in marriage isn't just a nice idea, right? It's something that you live out day by day, and it's not always easy, but it is worth it. So the first thing I want to stress is that self-care is at the heart of self-development, right? And no, of course, I don't mean pedicures or days at the spa, even though those are great. I am talking about real self-care where you're making sure you're eating and resting and moving your body and drinking your water and giving yourself mental breaks so you don't run on empty. When you're good to yourself, you show up better in your marriage. But if you're always exhausted and drained and depleted, what are you going to give your spouse? You're going to give your spouse the leftovers, and that's not fair to either of you. Have you checked out the PTSD Wives Handbook? This book is for the wife whose spouse has survived trauma and is now navigating through mood swings, flashbacks, and mishandled emotions. PTSD can create a toxic home environment and cause a divide in the closest and most meaningful relationships. As a caretaker, the PTSD wife is finding herself at the receiving end of anger, aggression, and constant negativity. This can create a personal, mental, and spiritual health crisis for her. In this book, Coach Leah uncovers the hidden wounds of trauma and the effects that it can have on your relationship. Based on biblical principles, she teaches you the tools and resources that are needed to handle stressful situations and to seek help from the Lord and foster a deeper relationship with Him. By reading this book and putting the principles into action, you're going to learn how to take control of your life and grab hold of the power that lies within. Grab your copy of the PTSD Wives Handbook today by clicking the link in the show notes. Now, back to the show. So self-awareness ties right into that, okay? And I don't mean just being aware of what you want to change, though that's a part of it. I'm talking about being aware of what gives you hope, what brings you joy, and what speaks to your soul. You got to pay attention to all of that. So if music stirs you, right, make time to listen. If painting or cooking or reading, it actually lights you up, you got to bring that back into your life. Those little sparks matter. And at the same time, be honest about your patterns. Are you shutting down when it's time to talk? Are you short-tempered? Do you keep putting yourself last? Awareness gives you a starting point for your growth. Now let's talk about emotions because the Lord knows they can run the show if we let them, right? The Bible says that the heart is deceitful, and that means your feelings will lie to you, right? They'll have you convinced that your spouse doesn't care, when in reality, they're just quiet or tired. Growth means learning to feel your emotions without being controlled by them. It means pausing before you react, right? Breathing and asking yourself, is this how it really is, or am I just tripping, right? Maybe it's just what I'm feeling right now, okay? That discipline right there is going to transform not only you, but your marriage. Boundaries are another piece. And I know that word can sound harsh, right? But boundaries aren't about pushing people away. They're all about protecting your peace and your progress. Think of them as guardrails, right? Maybe for you, it's saying no to every extra commitment so that you have time to recharge. Maybe it's protecting your morning time for prayer and for journaling. Maybe it's drawing a line around how you will or how you won't let people speak to you. Boundaries give you room to grow without constantly being drained. And here's something that a lot of women miss, right? Talk to your spouse about the work that you're doing. Don't leave them in the dark while you're off growing, okay? Share your goals. Tell them what you're working on. Let them in on your wins and even your struggles. Not only does it make them feel included, but it also gives them a chance to support you. Growth should bring you closer and not push you further apart. Now, when it comes to self-development, there are some things that I think every woman needs to invest in, okay? First, it's your self-worth and identity, all right? You got to know who you are outside of being a wife and a mom. That's the foundation. Then from there, you want emotional regulation, okay? Because being able to respond wisely instead of reacting in anger, that's going to change the tone of your whole household. Communication skills are right up there too, all right? You got to be able to express yourself clearly and honestly without shutting down or blowing up, okay? Boundaries, we already talked about that, but I'll say it again, okay? You got to protect your peace and your progress. And don't forget purpose and passion. You got to pursue something that makes you come alive. It's not selfish, it is necessary. And of course, as always, spiritual growth is going to anchor it all, okay? Your prayer, worshiping, and the word, okay? That's where your strength comes from. And finally, don't neglect your health and your wellness. You need your body to carry everything else that you're building. So you have to take care of your body. Now, y'all know none of this is going to happen overnight, right? Change is intentional. It takes discipline and it takes consistency. But if you start weaving these things into your everyday routine, little by little, choice by choice, you are going to grow. And that growth will not only change you, it's going to change your marriage. All right, you guys. Now, you know, every show, we got to do my favorite part, which is what? The coaching moment. Yay! All right. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to grab your journal. Grab your notebooks, your pen and paper, your notes app, whatever it is. Even get you a piece of paper, okay? Whatever you got, I want you to get something to write with, and I want you to spend some time this week working on these questions, okay? So, number one, what parts of myself have I neglected while serving my spouse and my family? All right? Where have I neglected myself being everything for everybody else? All right? Number two, what is one personal goal that I can set this month that has nothing to do with my marriage or kids? All right, I'll say it again. What is one personal goal I can set this month that has nothing to do with my marriage or my kids? And number three, How can my personal growth positively impact my relationship? All right. Now, once you've answered those questions, here's your challenge. All right. Every day this week, I want you to dedicate at least 30 minutes to yourself. Okay. Not to do chores, not to work, not to your spouse or kids, but to you. Maybe that looks like reading or walking or journaling or praying or doing some sort of hobby or just sitting still and breathing. Okay. The point is to invest in your growth. And here's the kicker. You have to be consistent because change doesn't happen overnight. It comes when you show up for yourself. You have to be consistent and keep showing up. All right? So this week, I want you to stop waiting for somebody else to change and start taking accountability for your own growth. Okay? You can't fix your spouse. You can't control anybody else, but you can work on you. And when you grow, everything around you has the opportunity to grow too. You guys, this was such a good episode. All right. This was a much needed conversation. So here's what I want you to take away. Again, personal growth in marriage starts with you. You can't fix your spouse. You can't control anybody else, but you can work on you, right? When you become the best version of yourself, that's going to have a ripple effect that's going to touch your marriage, your family, and every part of your life. All right. So before I go, I want to ask you guys a couple quick things, okay? If this episode has blessed you or encouraged you or gave you something to think about, I want you to do me a favor, okay? I want you to like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment about the show, okay? I want to hear your thoughts and your own experiences, okay? And by sharing this message, you're going to help to reach more women who need to hear it, all right? And don't forget, the conversation doesn't stop here, okay? Join me over in the locker room with Coach Leah. That's our after show space where we can go deeper, we share testimonies, and we talk through the topics together as a community, okay? You don't have to walk this journey alone. All right, you guys. So that is my time for today. Thank you so much for rocking with me today. Join us next week for another great episode. But until then, I want you to be encouraged, be empowered, and be blessed. Peace, y'all.